Hi, I'm Mahin Mustafa. I'm the CEO and founder of Mahin the Globe, a Seattle-based independent media company. And today we're doing a global education panel. Before I go into today, I just want to say it's 14th August, which is Pakistan's birthday, and I'm a very proud Pakistani American. So happy birthday, Pakistan. I'm going to send a lot of love to all my family there. And I also wanted to say that my grandmother, who passed away a few years ago, was an educator. She was the principal and dean of Sir Syed College, which is an all-women's college in Karachi. And she dedicated her entire life to education. So I hope she's watching over me and this is in her memory. Today, we're going to talk about the US crisis, global education crisis in a way. The pandemic is on, and amidst that, we have schools and colleges reopening this fall, and there's a lot of online learning, but there are challenges that come with it. We have two high school teachers out of Seattle over here. We have Leslie Moffat and Wendy Organ. We have the president of Western Washington University, Sabah Randhawa, and we have Simi Rahil, a big TV personality out of Lahore, and she's an educator, and she's worked for reproductive rights in Pakistan, a big advocate for that. And of course, Tessa Hoyos, who's wearing the colors of Pakistan's flag as well. I love her support for this. So Tessa, we're going to do a round of introductions. I'll start with my team. Tessa Hoyos, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Tessa Hoyos. I'm a writer and editor here at Mahin the Globe, and I cover beats education, wellness, business, fashion, tech, and space.
Yes. Leslie Moffat.
Good morning, my name is Leslie and I'm in my fourth decade as a high school band director. I've raised 3 of my own children and I'm an author of 2 best-selling books about education.
Wendy Organ.
My name is Wendy Organ and I will be beginning my 24th year as a public school teacher. I'm teaching anything from English and drama and social studies to French for the last good decade.
Sabah Randhawa.
Good morning. My name is Sabah Randhawa. I am the president of Western Washington University. I've been here at Western for about 4 years now. Prior to coming here, I was with Oregon State University for about 25 years. The last 10 as university's executive vice president and provost.
All right. So we lost Simi for a bit, but once she joins in, she can give her introduction. I can get into the questions. Wendy, I'll start with you. What are the overall challenges you're facing as an educator with the reopening of schools this fall?
If we think about, if we just table the issue of everyone's health, if we could just table that, we've been hearing a lot about people fearing that if we don't get kids back into the classroom, we will be losing their learning, which is kind of an interesting made-up construct because learning is a continuum that's individual and it's not set. So the challenges are creating education to our students that cross the all of the divides that we have, including racial divides and including socioeconomic divides, that we have kids who don't have Wi-Fi or kids who are watching siblings instead of being able to attend classes. So the challenges are numerous and sometimes feeling insurmountable, but I do believe that we will be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish this year.
Absolutely. Sabah Randhawa, I'll come to you now. What are the overall challenges you're facing as the president of Western Washington University with the reopening of schools this fall? You're on mute, Sabah.
It out, I thought.
There we go, we can hear you.
Yeah. So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Mahin, for inviting me. You know, as I think about the past 6 months, it really has been a journey through unpredictability and in particular, trying to do continuously adaptation as the external environment has changed. You know, about 8 weeks ago, we announced that we will offer about 20, perhaps 25% of courses in person. And I think that the reason we made that decision, first of all, our projections of the coronavirus pandemic in September, but also because residential campuses like Western Washington University are much more than offering courses. You know, it is about holistic development of students, certainly intellectual, but also emotional and social development. And, I strongly feel that at least for a certain group of students, having them on campus the first year, like for example, first year students, freshman students, was really critical in terms of developing community, in terms of building support groups, so they can, really be part of the broader community. Well, as we know, the pandemic markers in our state and the nation have not been moving in the right direction. So last week we scaled back, and we will now offer most of our courses remotely or online in fall. With about 10% of our courses in person, mostly courses requiring labs or studios, for example, in music or fine arts and disciplines of that nature. And part of it is that the safe in-person instruction required health verification, testing, tracing to control outbreaks. And it was too major a risk at the scale that it was really needed. So what keeps me up at night now that we have made the decision that we'll offer, most of our courses online in fall? I would say first and foremost, what I worry the most is that students get a quality education experience in fall. That is the hallmark of Western in terms of our education quality. I worry that the student may drop out for a year or delay attending university for a year. And under normal circumstances, I wouldn't worry too much about it, primarily because they could get a cultural experience abroad, or they could do an internship in industry. But those opportunities are limited at the moment. My second biggest worry is how do we create a sense of community when everyone is studying or working remotely? And I think mental isolation, mental health is a major issue. And I really do worry about our employees as well as about our students. And my last biggest worry is fiscal in nature, both for the university and students. As a state university, the state revenue is going to be down because of the pandemic. Economic activity has been limited. So that's going to affect the financial support from the state for public higher education. Enrollments are in flux, so that's going to have an impact. But from the student perspective, a lot of the families, particularly families who are really struggling with making ends meet because of loss of jobs or limited opportunities, higher education is going to be, supporting it is going to be a major issue. So those are some of the things that are, if you would, keeping me up at night.
Yeah, Sabah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because Tessa Hoyos is now in the final year of Western Washington University, and she'd like to share her students' perspective. But before that, a question she has for you. So go ahead, Tessa.
Hi, President Randhawa. So my question to you is, where do you think that WW stands when it comes to communicating the COVID-19 measures and the new normal of online and remote learning to students?
Sure. The easy answer is just to say that we are doing great, Tessa, but I think you want to hear a little bit more than that. So, first I would say, my team and I really have tried to over-communicate, but I do know that no amount of communication to students or to the university community is sufficient in times when, things are continuously shifting. I was reflecting a little bit the other day that the communication communication strategies and what I'm communicating with students and with employees is very different today than it was in March. In March, when the pandemic broke out, we quickly pivoted to online education. Looking back, it is remarkable how well faculty adapted to the situation within a 2-week period. And I would say the students were very gracious, accommodating, forgiving in this particular process. So my communication really focused on the now and urgent. But collectively also, we felt that this is a one-term problem, and we'll be back in person in fall, and we'll be back to normal. Well, that exactly hasn't happened. We are uncertain how long we are going to be in this situation. With luck through December, but there's a distinct possibility it may take much longer before you're back in person on campus. So charting a course and communicating is a lot more difficult, I think, today than it was in a crisis.
Right.
As difficult as it was, because I need to acknowledge the uncertainty and unpredictability in planning going ahead.
Yeah.
I need to acknowledge the disappointment and fears people have, whether it's about missing a term or the potential of the impact on jobs if economic downturn continues. And at the same time, I really believe that as a leader, I need to send a message of hope and resiliency. We are going to come out of this pandemic, and so we need to look at the longer term and the broader picture going forward.
Yeah.
So balancing these elements, uncertainty and resiliency, are necessary and important, but not that easy in an authentic way, I should say, but we are making our best effort.
All right, well, thank you so much for answering Tessa's question. And now, Tessa, please share a student's perspective. And I also want to say something very special about today's panel, that both of Tessa's high school teachers are here. So Wendy and Leslie taught Tessa in high school. So I think it's really special for her as well. And so Tessa, go ahead, share your student's perspective, and we'll go to your teachers.
Yeah, so when the pandemic hit in March, it was a very abrupt shift and everyone was confused. And I think that people still are confused because we don't know what's to come. But I'm just really proud of my community, my Western community, and people I know still at my high school for adapting and having hope. I know there are so many burdens, like the financial burden, the social burden, the mental health burden. But I believe that we can come out of this stronger, and we're finding ways to keep that community alive and find different ways to deal with it.
Right. So Wendy, I'll come to you. From a mom's perspective, you're a teacher and a mom. So it's just like a double whammy right now when you're doing online learning. How are you dealing with all of that? And what do you think fall is looking like for you and your kids and your students?
It's challenging. It's really, really challenging. I have a sophomore who attends college in Oregon, and she's fine. She's a young adult, and she is, like Tessa was saying, she's rolling with all of the punches that she's getting. My now senior in high school has a learning disability, so he's part of the special education department, and it was beyond challenging for him, who really struggles with executive functions, to be able to manage his normal course load, as well as like Tessa said, an abrupt change in schedules. And but we're resilient, and he's learning new strategies. As a mom, it's really challenging to be able to say, I can't help you right now because I have a class that I need to attend to, or being able to say to a class, I can't be on Zoom today because I need to tend to my kids. So it's constantly in flux, and every day is different. And
right.
Every even if Tuesday has the same schedule, every Tuesday is different, because it's so unpredictable. So
Right. And so Leslie, I want to ask you, because you're a music teacher, and me, Tessa, and MTG team is doing a global music collab. So we know there's a lag in music, like, if you're playing instruments and stuff. So that's kind of like a nightmare with like Zoom, So talk about the logistics of that, and how are you feeling as a teacher during this pandemic and online learning from a music perspective, I guess.
So if you had talked to most music teachers a year ago, you said, what do you do? I'd have said, I'm a band director. And my colleagues would say, I'm a choir teacher, orchestra director. We have now realized we are all music educators. And we typically have taught lots of skills, skill building, resilience, teamwork, and all these things through ensemble classes and through performance-based activities we do with our students, and we've been very product oriented. And so this sudden shift, where who'd have thought being a musician could be dangerous to your health? Oh my goodness, we can't play in one another's presence, we can't do those things. But we also can't duplicate that in an online situation, technology-wise, and there's so much real interaction that takes place when you're physically present and you hear in real time. So we aren't duplicating that. Instead of focusing on art products at the end, like the concerts and the compositions and those things, it's more about the artistic process now, and using music to help us heal, most of what I taught while we were on distance learning, or actually we should call it emergency learning because that's what it was last spring. In our emergency learning situation, I immediately started reaching out to my students, figuring out what we needed. And we did an online band project. And that's a different thing, but 99% of what we did was social and emotional stuff, keeping the kids connected through music. We started by making a Quarantunes playlist, and I asked each student to submit that one song that always pulls them out of that dark spot when they're really down. Then they had to write me a paragraph about why they picked it. Then they all sent them to me, and guess what? We now have a Quarantunes playlist with 147 different pieces of music picked by the very kids who are good friends with each other, so it'll resonate with each of them. All these activities I'm doing with students now are just new other ways of incorporating music. We've gotten sort of, has to be ensemble oriented for so many years that I think we lost some of the possibilities that have come up. And so I now see opportunities to be much richer in the end, but it's going to look different during this process of online learning and distance learning. We'll be really creative, and we're going to come out in the end with something that serves our students better and serves all of our students better, not just the ones who can be in certain situations and do just those things that we've been offering. So I'm looking at it as an opportunity because online band was not covered in my 1980s college classes.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's just beautiful. Music is definitely going to heal everybody during these tough times. I certainly believe it. I want to also talk to Simi Rahil. I call her endearingly Auntie Simi. She was part of my first panel when I did not know what I was doing. I was completely confused what this whole panel thing will look like, and now it's formed more shape. She's also my mom's really good friend, and she's a big TV personality, so I'm kind of fangirling right now. So Auntie Simi, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I have a question for you from a teacher's perspective with remote learning in Lahore and the challenges that Lahore is facing at this time.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever, whatever works for whoever. I hope you all well. I see that you are. And my name is Simi Rahil. I wear many hats. My hat of choice is of a trainer, and a teacher. But I'm an actor. I'm an activist. I've been an anchor. I've done a few films, television, I do regularly. I've done theater, etc., etc. But the love of my life is teaching and training. And I have taught for about 30 years. My subjects have been diverse. They have been communication and they have been art related. And I completely understand where Leslie is coming from, because when this whole thing began, I have been teaching a film school. And this term I had acting and improv. And then they told me that I had to teach acting and improv online. And so I was like, okay, I need to breathe and I really need to really think how I'm going to do this. Because it's such an interactive thing, teaching acting, and it's so physical and it's so collective and connected. And I was like, okay, guys, fine. And so we went online. The first few sessions, I talked to my students. I have a class of roughly 40 plus. So I asked them, okay, guys, tell me, what should we do? And everybody had their own thing. And I realized that at that point, they didn't need to learn acting or improvisation from me. They needed to learn how to be whole. They needed to learn how to connect to this strange new world of isolation. Some of them had COVID-19. They were completely isolated, but they could go online. So I realized that they didn't need a teacher. They needed a mentor. They needed somebody to listen to. They needed somebody to make them feel good about themselves and pull them out of dark places where they were. So I did teach them. I brought out a lot of theory, which I generally don't use because it's always indigenously connected. But I brought it out, and we did a lot of theory on acting and improv and exercises as best as we could. But what we did was we realized who we were, where we wanted to go, what our new world was going to be like, what are the things that we need for the new world. We need to connect differently, we need to speak differently, we need to think differently. And yes, music, of course. I do a lot of different types of music in my class. I still used to do it. I used to make them first in the morning, I used to make them stand up and say, let me see what you're wearing. I need you to look good. I want you to wear a shirt and a pair of shorts under it. I need you to go brush your hair, wash your face, look good for me. So after the first few days, they did start getting up, because that's very important. You can't lie in bed with a phone in front of your face and pretend you're having fun. That's
so
not
interesting that you mentioned that, Auntie Simi, because we have that rule too in MTG where we dress up, and sometimes you're overdressed, and it's okay because we feel good about ourselves, and you know, we channel positive vibes. So I want to talk about this pandemic, and I know we've all been through different phases of it, like mentally and physically, and every week is different. The news is like crazy and overwhelming. So what are our means as just human beings, educators, yes, but as human beings dealing with this? Because I'm also playing a role of a mentor teacher to Tessa, and it's, even though it's like extremely fulfilling, but it's also like a lot of energy that I think teachers put out, and emotions, and it's fulfilling, but it's also exhaustive, right? So how do you cope? For me, I think connecting with my family, listening to music, dancing are my coping mechanisms. Sabah, I'd like to ask you, what's your coping mechanisms as an educator when you're not watching TV or dealing with students in the crisis at WWU? What's your coping mechanism?
Well, that's a good question. So I read a lot, and that way has, even without the pandemic, but certainly in the pandemic, has been wonderful. It has given me an opportunity to spend more intentional time with my spouse, with my wife, and so we walk about 4 to 5 miles a day. Which is always good to get, but more than walking, it's an opportunity really to talk about humanity and ourselves. And what Simi just said, that this is an opportunity really to reframe the future and to really think about how do we reconnect with our own humanity and humanity of others. And I think just that expansive thinking at times get you out of the funk one is in. At the end of the day, we are all humans. We get depressed. We get, bogged down with all the issues that we are facing, either at a personal level or at a professional level. So to your question, reading and spending time, particularly with my wife, but with colleagues, in terms of conversations that are not about the here and now.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful time to be introspective, and we believe in mindfulness as well. And yeah, I think writing and reading has been our savior, Tessa, hasn't it? Tessa, what's going on for you? How is this week looking like?
It's looking pretty okay. We're actually planning a trip down to Arizona to see family safely. So that's something that's pretty exciting. And, I walk my dog every single day, and it's a good way to get outside and absorb the much needed vitamin D.
Yes. Wendy, what's keeping you happy this week?
My puppy. She's just joyful all the time, and it reminds me to be joyful. For me, I'm such an extrovert, and the quarantine really, like Sabah was saying, it really, my gosh, put me in quite a funk. I hated it. I hated teaching online. I hated not being able to have that physical proximity with my students, and I realized through all of this that my need to be quiet really fuels me. Just simply either in meditation or yoga or just sitting on the couch, just being quiet actually replenishes me. So that's been a real shift for me.
Yeah, I feel like I live in the city. that city buzz, like getting a break from that has been amazing. And yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that. I'm a crazy mix of extrovert and introvert. I go through weeks where I'm like so happy not to see anyone's face, but then I'm like, this week is like, I'm missing my friends, you know, and most of my friends are around the globe. So Zoom is the savior. Or WhatsApp video and things like that. Simi, what about you? How's this week looking like? What are you still doing the? You're an artist, right? You also sketch stuff, as far as I remember.
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff. I garden. I do a lot of gardening. I have a lot of animals in the house, outside the house. I feed a lot of animals. I do a lot of online sessions. A lot. I do a lot of conferences and seminars and development discussions, etc., etc. And I've learned to listen well. We as teachers talk a lot. We say a lot of things. We think we have lots to say, but it's time to listen, and everybody's listening well now. So it's good to understand the other people's needs and their perspectives. And I think one thing I must suggest to everybody who's listening in the educational perspective, we need to retrain all our teachers how to teach, because what they teach is theory, and now theory is available all over the net. You can Google anything you want, but how do you want to translate it into your life? How do you want to use that information as knowledge in your life? So a lot of teachers in Pakistan, at least, 40 years ago, they finished learning and they started teaching. And in all these years, in these 40 years, they have disconnected from the youth. Now that they're not in classroom and there is no board behind them, they are finding it very difficult to navigate through the technical haze of student knowledge and their know-how, and they're not being able to cope with it. So I think a lot of teachers need to go back to school.
Right. And now that we're left in our last 5 minutes or something like that, I just want to ask something really interesting. So yeah, we are saying we're connecting to people through Zoom, right? Zoom is a savior. Everyone's on Zoom, but there's also Zoom fatigue. Like, what do you do with the Zoom fatigue? Like, I have this thing because I'm running a newsroom and a media company, so I shut my phone off. It's extreme, dramatic, but it's been the best thing. I did that 2 weeks ago. I did a 1-week phone detox, the best thing I did to myself. But with Zoom fatigue, because you're essentially teaching on Zoom, Sabah, how do you think we should deal with Zoom fatigue?
I have no idea. I think part of it is just acknowledging that there are some things that, I hear this, what you're saying, Maheen, from my colleagues all the time. For me, one of the biggest challenges of this whole Zoom world is that I worked long hours even before the pandemic, but when I went home, there was a natural break. That break doesn't exist anymore. I mean, things just, and so, all I can say is, as others were commenting, maybe in a process of just taking some time off is absolutely critical. But I wish I had a better answer than that, Maheen.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Leslie, what should we do with Zoom fatigue?
No, it's sort of an overall thing. My first book is all about balance between a job you dearly love. I love my job, but it's killing me. I put so many hours and the like into it. And whether that's in person or I could leave school a lot, come home, but my head was still at school. It didn't matter where I was. So I've dealt with this before, and the important thing I came out of all of this learning and why I wrote a book is having to, there are some things you really have to intentionally do to survive situations where you can't control everything. Boundaries are super important. And the only way I've survived these last several months is I actually created what I call my Empower method. Starts with the letter M, Power method that I created for my book. And I've used that as the basis of everything through this. And that is paying careful attention to the movement I make so that my body gets movement to stimulate all the things that need to happen so I can continue to stay focused and healthy. the meals I eat. It's important to continue to fuel my body and my brain with what it needs to function. Also, the music I listen to can enhance and help me change my moods, be uplifted. And then the other piece of that is mindfulness. And taking a mindful approach is what I'm doing really important in helping me reach my goals in serving my students and my community. When I am worn out and mentally exhausted, I cannot be of service to the very people I want to serve. So it is essential for the survival of our students and for our own sustainability to set boundaries, to physically set a space where you work, and then even if you can't get it out of your sight, maybe put a blanket over it in the evenings or something to try to distance. But we have to be intentional about this, or the work and the jobs and everything else will take us over, and then we won't be any good to ourselves or others, and our immune systems will be weaker. And you know what will happen. I know from firsthand experience what will happen. So just as we move through all of this, whether it's next week or this next year, is being intentional with what we're doing for ourselves and our students and our families.
That's such a beautiful thought you shared. We believe in mindfulness and we do it all the time as well. You have to be intentional with it. And unless we are kind to ourselves and empathetic to ourselves, we cannot be kind to others. So being kind is so important. Leslie, can you tell us about the 2 books that you have and where we can find them on Amazon or somewhere else? One is I Love My Job, but it's killing me. Second is Love the Job, Lose the Stress. Where can I read it?
Sure, I'll do a shameless plug since you asked. The print book of I Love My Job, But It's Killing Me can be purchased at any bookstore or online. And then my second book is Love the Job, Lose the Stress, and it's successful social and emotional learning for the modern music classroom. And I actually teach how to do a mindfulness with your students every single day, every class. I tune my students, literally get our bodies and our brains in tune before we touch our instruments. So everyone's calm, our heart rates are reduced. It has changed everything. And I teach that in my second book, which is available on Amazon as an ebook right now. And it's heading to the publisher. I already sent off the final stuff. It's heading to the print part next. So it's on Amazon.
The reason why I mentioned Amazon was because I want Simi to get it. She's in Lahore. Like, where can she buy it, kind of a thing. So, well, thank you so much, all of you, for your time and for your
love it.
And it's an honor to have you guys on and give us time today. Keep healing, keep educating, keep doing what you're doing. You guys are doing an incredible job, and it's serving so many things. And we just hope we get out of this pandemic stronger as a strong individuals and then as strong institutions. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good weekend.
Bye-bye.